Morning, everybody. We will give folks a minute or two to get settled, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, we'll give it 2 more minutes and then we'll get going. Okay, so I think in the interest of time, I will get us kicked off and then people can trickle in as they are available. But thank you, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon. My name is Mary Burbridge, or Mary Keto, I should say, just got married. And I am the Senior Director of Sales at Lytics. Today, we are joined by our partners at LiveRamp to discuss a topic that comes up pretty frequently in our customer conversations and our industry, which is identity resolution. Today, we're joined by experts at LiveRamp to have a discussion around customer data, how it can be leveraged to really create better customer experiences with strong identity resolution. And so I am excited to have the conversation and share our experience today. We are joined by Alicia Melissa-Rados, Head of Solutions Engineering at LiveRamp. In her role, she oversees LiveRamp products, platforms, architecture across all brands, publishers, integrations, and strategic partnerships. And she's been in the ad tech industry since 2006, with a historical focus on, of course, identity and data privacy. Needless to say, she is extremely passionate about technology, identity infrastructure, and the future of cloud collaboration. And overseeing solutions engineering gives her a really great vantage point in the technology journey within LiveRamp's vision, as well as partnerships throughout the digital ecosystem. We are also joined by Kevin Dunn, who is the Vice President of Industry Sales for CPG and Retail at LiveRamp. He brings 15 years of experience across sales, partnerships, and customer success to the conversation. In his experience leading the retail and CPG sales team, needless to say, he works with some of the largest global brands, helping them establish a strong data foundation predicated on identity resolution. Alicia and Kevin, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So awesome. So let's start off by setting a foundation and talking about what we mean when we say identity resolution. I think in very, very simple terms, it's really the process of creating a customer profile by resolving data across potentially multiple digital as well as non-digital touch points, attributes, and systems. So a really simple example of this in practice that we see often at Lytics, and I'm sure at LiveRamp, is taking maybe my email name and physical address from a data warehouse and pairing it with my email address from a marketing automation platform with my history of email engagement into one profile. Typically for us at Lytics, this topic comes up in conversations where maybe customers lack a complete view of their customers, and it's preventing them from creating a strong, personalized customer experience. So, Alicia, I'd love to hear in your experience working with brands on the solutioning side, how it comes up in the context of working with LiveRamp. And if you could even help clarify for the audience, maybe the different types of identity resolution, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mary. First and foremost, most brands have so many different touch points on their customers. There's just a number of different mechanisms in which you can have known customer data, you can have anonymous customer data, on-site, off-site, perhaps even partnerships. Like if you think about the travel industry and maybe those kind of third-party travel partners that they might work with, or even a CPG or a retailer like Kevin works with very closely, where they might not even have a concept or mechanism of tying that unknown in-store purchase data and might want to partner with someone else for in-store credit card transaction data. So there's just heaps and heaps of touch points across the offline and online worlds. So I think the largest brand, platform, and customer concern that come to a company like a LiveRamp is, how do I know for sure that I am reaching Alicia? And how do I know for sure I'm not reaching Alicia on 4 different types of PII touch points, thinking that she's 4 individuals? So really trying to get much more prescriptive to have an understanding of my email, my social IDs, my postal address, whatever types of disparate information touch points you have on me as an individual and as a consumer, and really unifying that to not be email marketing me to both my email accounts, but maybe the one that has more email opens, or targeting me on inventory or publishers or whomever, where I'm not actually unified as a customer and you're measuring me as 2 different individuals, and my frequency or recency or path to conversion on one is much higher than the other because maybe the other device or PII touch point you had on me is not very active.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it a little bit, but you can imagine as a brand, if I am trying to potentially recommend another product to you based on past purchases, and I'm dealing with maybe incomplete or duplicative information, that can create a problem around delivering that kind of really tailored recommendation to you. Kevin, I'm sure this comes up a lot in your conversations. What do you see as maybe the risks of having disparate data or incomplete profiles, and kind of how does that materialize in your customer conversations?
I mean, most of my customers, right, they're talking about how do they target the right audience, and to your point, how do they retarget the right audience? And to do that, you need like a customer profile built of your first party data, partner second party data, maybe some third party data, because that allows you to really target, your particular ICP. And what we see a lot of brands sort of making the mistake of is they kind of have 2 different identity logics or framework. They have one sort of in the offline space, they have one in the online space, and maybe they have 3 or 4 different applications where they have different identity frameworks. And basically what this means is then you have no identity framework, because all you're doing is identity resolution inside those applications or inside those media types, on and offline media. And so that's, I think, a huge danger that brands run into of repeat messaging, oversaturation of messaging to clients, or just really turning them off to be the first time or repeat buyers because that experience isn't consistent. And so this is why we often talk to our clients a lot about putting that identity foundation at the core, at the beginning of the creation of that consumer profile. So like wherever that first party data is being stored, or wherever that first party data is actually going to be segmented or built out, or insights will be gained on it. So that's like a huge danger that we see, is that multiple identity framework. And you see it sometimes because they have agencies, they have an ESP, they have a CDP, they have a DMP, a DSP, and they have nothing sort of connecting that sort of mishmash of technology products. And most brands don't go all up in one technology stack. They want to use the best of breed. And when you use the best of breed, you need to have an identity framework around that best of breed or inside that best of breed.
That's actually a great natural segue, and you kind of led right to it, right? So we're here as Lytics and LiveRamp. Lytics being a customer data platform, LiveRamp being, a platform that enables data collaboration, and some of the use cases that you talked about. So maybe I'll ask Alicia this question since you're working on this with customers, but what would you say is kind of the value of having something like a customer data platform that is dealing predominantly in first-party data and then layering in a live ramp and kind of creating a complete identity framework for an organization?
Yeah, great question. I do think, and also to your point, Kevin definitely alluded to some of this and just some of his talk track there. I think if you think about a retailer, we'll use that example as a first, and then I'll go into maybe like a QSR to two of those points. So if you're a retailer and let's say you're doing some sort of data curation or profiling, or maybe even like machine learning or scoring of that individual just based on your own data sources, Valentine's Day just passed. Let's say I bought a partner some gift that might be in a different gender or propensity or something that I only know about them from the last 6-month purchase. So now I'm starting to target Alicia based on a product that I purchased that has nothing to do with me because it was for a significant other. That particular type of information for personalization might just be on one particular purchase. Whereas if you're layering in an identity graph or some sort of even third-party attributes from demographics, psychographics, you might actually be able to glean many more different types of insights about me for much more customization of personalization. Then additionally, I will say the reason I mentioned like a quick service restaurant use case is sometimes a lot of that information is done at a household level versus individual. And when you have an identity graph, in addition to like in a CDP, having just the tagging or site or in-app type functionality or that first party data, you'll also be able to bring together household level and individual level information with multiple touch points on that kind of identity infrastructure to understand those individuals as well as the households they reside in.
Just for the benefit of the audience, since I'm sure some are kind of far along in this path, some might be kind of just starting to explore CDP and this type of technology. Can you maybe define what an identity graph is in this context?
100%. And I tend to always get that exact question, like, what is this? What is that? How does it work with a CDP? So to your point, CDPs are excellent for tag management, for site personalization, for that kind of data storage, audience and segmentation, profiling, et cetera. But sometimes they don't have, let's say within the online and offline space, that unification of multiple different touch points per individual and household. So at its simplest form, I would define an identity graph as an infrastructure to house all different and disparate touch points, both in the offline or known, as well as anonymous, because there are online and offline identity graphs, so that you have a unification across the two worlds of an individual person, as well as the household they reside in. And graphs can be comprised of many different sources. So if you think of all of the competitors in the space, some people cite census information or retail SKU level information or credit bureau information, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a variety of different types of contributors that are encompassing those touch points to make up the US population as well as its individual people.
Got it. So it's almost like a map of an individual across online, offline, potentially in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the key to the identity graph, is that bridge between on and offline. And what we often talk about at LiveRamp, but other identity providers talk about, is having that offline foundation, right? So LiveRamp has one that covers 98% of the US consumer population, right? But also you need to have the ability to layer in some of your own logic on top of that. And that's where a customer data platform comes into effect, right? Because you are collecting, information from your point of sale system or from your website. And then you need to sort of help, the graph build by deciding which Mary is the right Mary, which email is the right email for Mary. And then we can help confirm, yes, that is Mary. It's not a Mary who moved or a Mary who used a different email address. And so you can think of this sort of synergy between a CDP and an identity graph, as which a CDP is helping you build an identity logic within your own first party data. but an identity graph brings in external knowledge of who that person is, what are the touch points derive them for who they are, because your first party data is that it's first party data. So your ability to build an identity graph without an identity graph is only as good as the quality of your first party data, which is naturally going to have a lot of holes in it. And so that's where we see a lot of our retail CPG clients in particular using CDPs, so they can have sort of that de-siloed collection of first party data and have a central place where they collaborate with other data sets to build out that profile. And that's like the 101 of how to use an identity graph, right? You're layering on third party knowledge on top of your knowledge.
So that's a great explanation for the audience, because I think some folks are coming in with, a baseline understanding versus, maybe this is the first time they're learning about identity resolution. Something that you just mentioned, Kevin, though, is data collaboration. Can you maybe talk through maybe some practical examples in your customer base of how data collaboration can be used for maybe a joint campaign or something that you've seen maybe in CPG and retail that would benefit the audience?
Yeah, when I think of data collaboration, the other term I think of, which I think marketers have talked about for a very long time, is second party data, right? And you've heard marketers forever talking about the power of second party data, which is the merging of two first party data sets, right? So a classic example is Target and P&G, right? Natural partners, you can buy almost any P&G product within a Target, and they actually both have like really interesting first party data sets about their consumers. So first party data is data they've collected themselves about their consumers, right? Well, a problem the industry has had for a very long time is, do I really want to share my first party data with someone who's, even though a partner, it's still my valuable first party data? And so for a long time, this holy grail of second party data has been missed out on. Well, through technology advancements and the ability to give people this privacy safe, controlled based environment, some people are calling them clean rooms, where both brands can put first party data together. I can now create interesting insights for a bunch of use cases, targeting, retargeting, where we see a lot of CPGs and retailers working together on this joint first party data set is targeting shoppers inside of those stores for increased category adoption of a particular CPG product. So let's just use Kleenex as an example, right? Or tissue paper. I might want to build out that category. So I want to understand, as the CPG, my share of the target wallet of that particular product. I can merge those two first party data sets and realize that Mary buys one type of tissue, which is not my tissue. Alicia buys my type of tissue. So I want to target her as a repeat buyer, give her incentives to buy more tissue. And I want to convert Mary to now a loyal tissue buyer of my tissue. And so that's a classic sort of use case, but it also depends on how retailers are going to market, right? And so you see more and more retailers, instead of just driving people into their store to monetize their business, I'm going to actually monetize that first party data, because as things like third party cookies go away, retailers actually house one of the most powerful forms of consumer data, which is first party data about consumer shopping behavior. And so that's like a huge use case we see for data collaboration, which again, I'll just say merging of two first party data sets to create an enhanced audience for better targeting of that audience of particular products they might be interested in buying within that particular retailer's location.
That's super helpful. So you shared a really good practical example of how two companies can leverage that data collaboration, whether it's for a joint campaign or to even monetize that audience. But I think what would be helpful too is, I think a lot of times, especially at Lytics, when we talk about creating a customer profile, that's usually the foundation under which companies start their kind of data journey together. And often what happens is we have this conversation around building this unified profile. And then the natural next question is, what's next? What do I do it? How is it going to impact anything on the bottom line? So I'd love to hear from both of you, how do you operationalize an identity and a profile, and how does it have downstream revenue impacts or productivity impacts that you've seen?
Yeah, I would probably start by saying, like, Kevin and you, Mary, both bring up great points. And just to some of the questions in the chat, it is one of those things to think about from like what level you're starting at in terms of not only your understanding as even a viewer of this, but even as a marketer and a brand, because every single partner that we work with has a very different understanding of what they need, where they're starting from, and why. And if you think about like the customer use cases of how to actually prove out the efficiency or how to even evaluate what you need, really, I would say it's more from a perspective of what's your ultimate goal for targeting and strategy? Like some people just do email marketing, some people just do social, some people just do direct mail. It's really dependent on what types of, because obviously we talk a lot about first party data. So
Mhm.
that can be a variety of different things for customers. That could be data that you're collecting just from on-site. And maybe you came from the world of just capturing that. And now you have stores, and now post-pandemic, you're getting a lot of more in-store transactions and things of that nature. So you want to try and think about where you're wasting your spend when we talk about these kind of like identity infrastructures and where we're personalizing in our, consumer data platform, how we're actually developing the strategy to unify this. So identity is such a broad term and obviously can be confusing for many, because simply put, identity for a consumer or a brand at times is really just understanding how I'm spending my money and how I'm making the dollar back and the return on investment on that particular architecture. So I would say, I don't know if you disagree, Kevin, but a lot of that does start with all of your different types of data and then how you're actually marketing to that individual.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, right? You think of what are the marketing tactics I take after building this identity graph, and one of the simplest but most effective and first steps is always suppression, right? But it's actually really hard to suppress the right people from your target audience unless you have an identity graph, right? Because you might not fully understand, should I suppress this person or not? So that advanced audience targeting is super important. But then the only way you confirm really that you suppressed the right people from certain campaigns, like say, I want to take a first-time shopper and create them to a second-time shopper, is measuring in-store transactions, right? And the funny thing about measurement is, everyone wants to do it, but there's only certain types of measurement you can really do. So like this dream of closed loop, omni-channel, all the marketing buzz terms can only really be done if you can bridge two worlds together, on and offline, right? Because point of sales transactions happen offline, the touch point happens online. And so you need to be able to tell, like, hey, I targeted this first time buyer who wanted to be a second time buyer with a digital impression, that they actually come to the store and buy it. And when they come to the store and buy it, they use offline identity information. And so, to get that right, you need to properly measure. To properly measure, you need an identity graph to connect the two worlds together so that that digital impression led to offline conversion. And that's how you actually, to your point, Mary, start really seeing the effects to both the top and bottom line, because now you're effectively spending ad dollars to drive what everyone wants, which is conversions, right? And by suppressing the right people and targeting and retargeting the right people, you're shortening the time between those sort of milestones of monetization, which is, prospect to first time buyer to second time buyer, third time buyer.
Yeah.
Is like the holy grail, because that's when you see spend jump by plus 60% typically. And understanding how many touch points and which touch points are the most effective to get them through that journey is super important. And again, if you're doing it across multiple different places, which you should be, you need something to sort of touch those things together.
And to that point, in the CDP, that kind of historical transactional information will help you curate better profiles in your CDP of your consumer.
Yeah, I see lots of like retail brands using CDPs to, build the foundation, launch the campaigns, and then quickly start iterating and like optimizing those campaigns in real time, because now they have this true understanding. They're going, oh, Mary bought something, like switch it to this campaign to that campaign, or Mary didn't buy something, continued to hit her in this campaign, but let's try a different channel, right? And you can't make those fast decisions without something like a CDP. And I think if you think about today's consumer, like they're moving fast, and you can easily miss out on the opportunity to another brand who is moving that fast. So I think that's another place where you affect the top and bottom line, is that speed of reacting to how Mary's interacting with your brand.
Also the speed of purchase, because obviously the higher dollar ticket items will take a longer sales cycle. And obviously you're going to have more time to actually convert versus some of, like in your world, Kevin, some of the CPG stuff, no one's really doing research to buy, cleaning products, whereas they might do research to take a trip and book a hotel and book a flight. So there's definitely also like a path to conversion, as well as the transactional dollar value that'll also help with these disparate types of overlaps of identity, first party, second party, and third party data sources.
Totally. And if you had a good consumer profile, I know that I'm impulsive. And so if you hit me up between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. after the kids go to bed, even high ticket items, I'll probably buy.
There's a lot of Vegas purchases in your past history. Yes.
So if you're listening, you're getting firsthand advice on how to enhance Kevin's profile across your system.
Yes. And also if anybody sells luxury shoes, you don't even have to personalize it. I'll probably buy them.
There we go. Easy. So we have about 4 minutes left. I think what I would love to end with, and then open it up for any last minute questions, is we've talked about a lot of different things that companies can do, practical applications of identity. We talked about data collaboration, but it's not a small task to sort of undertake any of those things. So I'll start with you, Alicia. Like, I would love to just kind of end with, what advice would you give a company that's starting down this journey, maybe has never had a complete, view into the customer profile, but wants to get started with something in the next couple of months?
I think for sure, understanding what your goals are and what success actually looks like for you is the best place to start, because a lot of people do come in with so many different ideas, particularly if they're also working with like a bunch of different agencies or consulting partners that are all telling them one thing or another, or they're evaluating just blanketed RFP questions where they're like, I want to know this, but they're not actually applying it to their business use cases. I think that's a fantastic place to start, to be like, this is what I actually think success looks like for me. This is what I want the return on this particular single dollar to look like. And here's what I've done historically. So providing partners like Lytics, LiveRamp, whoever, cloud, like wherever you're actually evaluating, that kind of detail of like, I target on these DSPs, I do this social marketing. Here are my gaps to what I actually have no visibility into seeing. And here's how many different types of identifiers I have access to. Because once you actually give companies like ourselves this type of information, as well as what a path to success really looks like for you, or even saying, I don't know what success looks like I have so much data. What is data? Like everybody's like data, but like, what kind of data do you have? What kind of data are you missing out on? These kind of things, I think, the concept of no question is too silly. It is really true, because if you don't know, that means probably most of your coworkers, colleagues, partners also don't really know. They don't have that firm understanding. Because to your point, Mary, there's so many different partners and spaces. And to Kevin's earlier point, a lot of people are using not even just one CDP, not even one cloud, not even one like data, measurement environment or collaboration partner. So when you have all of these different types of partners, you do really have to think about what your path to success looks like for us and many partners to help you architect the best customer experience for return on investment.
Well said. I think we are just about at time. It's incredible how fast that went. When you're talking about identity resolution, it's always a very detailed topic, and there's a lot of different avenues to go down. So I want to thank you both for joining the conversation. I hope for all of our participants, it was helpful. And just to sum it up, we covered a range of topics around practical applications from customers, kind of defined different terms around identity resolution and identity graph, And hopefully left everybody with some input on how to start the data activation journey. Before we wrap up, I did just want to share that the three of us will be attending LiveRamp's Ramp Up Conference in San Francisco next week. So be sure to check it out if you are interested. And again, want to thank all of our participants, and then of course, Alicia and Kevin for joining the discussion today.
Yeah, I think we could have gone on for another hour, so we
Love
could
to do part
do
two.
more. If you all want, just let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you both, and thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you, everyone.